Okay, today I'm going to talk to you about something super important, which is shoe rotation. If you want to run faster, recover quicker, and avoid injuries, it might all start with your shoes. Not just which ones you wear, but how you use them throughout the week and the training schedule. A lot of runners get this wrong, and it slows progress. They wear the same pair of shoes every day and then wonder why they break down. Today, I'm gonna walk you through my personal shoe rotation, why I've built it this way based on experience, why it works, and how to build your own. I'm Lee Grantham, a coach and a professional ultra runner, and I went from not being able to run for 500 meters to being British champion for the 100K and running 6 hours and 42 minutes. And I did that by going from not being able to run for 500 meters to getting my 5K over a 5-month period to sub 20 minutes, and then thinking, without any limiting beliefs, it's only a matter of training before I could turn this 5K pace into my 100K pace. And that's exactly what I did. And along the way, I took huge chunks off my marathon. Like in an 11-month period, went from 3 hours and 25 minutes to 2 hours and 37 minutes. And now I help runners to do exactly the same, make huge gains. So if you've got the work ethic, the discipline, and most importantly, the positive attitude, then I can help you with the guidance and the knowledge. So if you want to go significantly faster with your running, then get in contact by booking a call in the link in the description. First off, shoes are very individual. So forget the hype, the branding, and what your mate's wearing. If something is constantly appearing in your Instagram feed, likely the reason is because the marketing strategy that works is a bad product on the feet of a great athlete. And guess what? All of a sudden, everybody in the world wants it, because is that what makes that guy fast? It's not. But of course, if we look at marathon victories and the podium for different marathons, especially the fastest marathons in the world, you can see there's a trend there. And then you can go and check out those 3 or 4 brands and what works for you. Go to a proper running store. And I know there are less and less of them out there, but go to a proper running store and see what works for you. The first thing you're looking for is comfort. And I'm not talking about having the feeling that your foot is wrapped in cotton wool. Actually, we want our feet to be able to feel the ground when we're moving. What I'm talking about in terms of comfort is the upper solid? Does it wrap around my foot but not too tightly? Are there any hot spots? Is the lacing solid? It blows my mind how many companies have not got this right yet. You want your lacing to be tight but not too tight and reliable. You also want room enough in the toe box so that when your foot swells in the final third of the marathon, your foot expands, you're not going to be tight in the shoe. So you want that slight bit of extra toe box room, but not too much, so your foot is moving around. One of the most important areas for me is I want my heel locked in. I don't want to feel that heel moving around, because again, you're thinking about not yourself right now in the shop, trying on different shoes or running an easy run. You're thinking about the third hour of your sub 3 hour marathon attempt. Do you want any hot spots or blisters? They will sideline you. Why shoe rotation matters. Now, if you pick a brand that has this well thought through, every shoe has a purpose and has a slightly different purpose. And some shoes, your race day shoes are a good example of this, will do essentially the same job, but there's personal preference. So you've got the option of which one to choose. If we keep on the topic of super shoes, what happened in 2016, 2017, or 2017 when the shoe was released, all of a sudden they make you quicker. And it's there in terms of propulsion and energy saving. They make you faster. And so what a lot of runners did is did all their running in super shoes. And guess what happened? Because essentially the task, or one of the tasks of the super shoe, is to deliver you to that 20-mile mark fresher. Your legs are fresher than previously. And if you live through this period and have ran a marathon on racing flats, the old non-super shoes, and then ran a marathon on super shoes, the difference is night and day. And that feeling at 20 miles is big. So if you use those super shoes strategically, and we get used to them for marathon running or for half marathon running, 10K running, they are a lethal weapon in your armory, in your shoe lineup. But if we use them all the time, what happens is the muscles get weak, the running body gets weak. And how that looks like from experience with coaching lots of runners and talking to lots of runners in personal experience is you get calf issues, small calf tears. All of a sudden, soleus and the gastroc are not as strong as they used to be, leading to injury. Same thing with a hamstring, same thing with the glutes, and also same thing with a quadricep. We've almost got to look at it like a different skill when you're in running shoes. And this is the same for every single type of shoe that you use. If we're going to use the super shoe, it's going to give us another 1, 2, 3 centimeters on our stride length. So let's times that stride length by a typical Cadence, 165 to 190, times the amount of time that we're going to be out there, 2 to 3 to 4 hours. You can do the maths. That's a lot of times that you're hitting the ground at 3 times, generally speaking, 3 times your body weight. You're hitting the ground at a slightly different angle. So for a long period of time, you're using your body in a different way to what you've been training. And how that will feel is you might cramp because you're using the muscle in a slightly different way. So you'll feel a cramp at first, and then you'll think it's nutrition or hydration, a hotter day, when it's actually the super shoes. What we've got to do is use the super shoes in training once it gets to the business side of the training schedule so that your body is prepared for the extra stride length. The cadence is the same, of course, but you're working over the ground in very much the same way as that you're going to be 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour into a marathon. What we want to do with the shoe rotation is use other shoes and bare feet to strengthen the running body, to strengthen the leg muscles especially. So we're protecting ourselves against overuse injuries, yes. We're developing that resilience and strength, but we're also preparing ourselves specifically to do the task that we're training towards, which is going to be, in most cases, in super shoes. So how do we do that? And just before I tell you about my shoe rotation, this is how far back my relationship with super shoes goes. This is the first generation of 4% from Nike before they even got on to this popular type. But I was an Adidas guy. I was absolutely all over the Adidas Boston Boost. And before that, even the Adidas Adizero Adios, I think it was called, that we saw Dennis Kimetto win the 2014 Berlin Marathon, the first guy under 2 hours and 3 minutes. That's before super shoes. And I remember watching that race and that shoe confirmation being so reaffirmed because he'd gone 23, 24 seconds faster than Wilson Kipchoge the previous year in the same race, Berlin Marathon. And just so you understand how fast that actually was and how super shoes have completely changed the game in distance running, but especially marathon running. In 2014, Dennis Kimetto was the first person to break 2 hours and 3 minutes and ran 2 hours and 57 or 2 hours and 59 seconds. Before the release of the first super shoe in early 2016, and remember, early 2016, so we're going into marathon season as of the spring 2016, only 3 people broke before 2016 the sub 2 hour 3 minute barrier. Since the invention of this, and then the models afterwards, super shoe technology, and then other brands catching up, 2-3 years later, 2018, 2019, 1,250 men have gone under 203. Now, that is an astonishing figure and just goes to show how useful super shoes can be for you if you use them at the right time during the training. And an interesting fact, these are signed by Bernard Lagat, because he was just there at the time with Nike. And I remember going up to him and I was like, oh, Osaka, 2007, you did the double. And we were talking for a while. So if you're a big Bernard Lagat fan and you want to bid for these, I can donate the money to the local dogs and cats home. So I was a big Adidas guy. And a lot of that was to do with a very special foam, EPTU foam, which is an abbreviation for something far more technical that I'll put on the screen. But that had been developed by BASF, I think the biggest chemical company in the world, or one of the biggest chemical companies in the world, that had built this specialist foam for Adidas and previously Puma, but then Adidas had taken an exclusive contract. And looking back at that period of complete dominance by Adidas, it's fair to say that they had rested on their laurels and become complacent on having built the fastest shoe in the world. Great sole, had the continental grip, fantastic. But when I've subsequently been taken on by Nike and then been lucky enough, and really is an insight, to go to European headquarters and the North American headquarters in Oregon, the Innovation Center is like walking into NASA. You've got to sign an NDA, and what you see is unbelievable. The amount of money that they put into innovation is unbelievable. And at a point where, unless you're probably Adidas, and I think Nike is 3 times the size of Adidas, it's likely that you cannot compete with that. And it's one of the main reasons that I stick with them today, because they've got that consistency. They're not going anywhere. And they might drop the ball from time to time. Like, I think all this nonsense around sponsoring Kanye West with Adidas and whoever Nike's got on the other side, I think is nonsense. And I think what we really want to see as runners, as children for sure, is sports stars wearing the great stuff. And that's Nike's background. If you read a great book by Phil Knight, the founder with Bill Bowerman of Nike, called Shoe Dog, it's fantastic about the history. And it was all about experimenting with technology, experimenting with materials, experimenting with the surface of the track to make Prefontaine and the other athletes around faster. I feel that as soon as Nike stray from that, they kind of get off the path, and that is the path. It's the Michael Jordan, the McEnroe, the rebellious characters, the Prefontaine. That's what we love. But back to the innovation, because you've got me on a topic now that I could talk all day for. But in terms of innovation, if you couple what they have, so like NASA or Tesla, if you couple that with what is coming out from the relationships they have with Kenyan athletes circled around Eluid Kipchoge, and the feedback they're getting, that's very difficult to not just compete with, but get anywhere near. So my current shoe rotation starts with all the slower stuff. The very easy recovery run is in the Pegasus. You're getting very little from this shoe, apart from being locked in, comfortable, great upper, solid on the heel, very similar to all Nike's products. There's no hot spots, but it's giving me very little in terms of propulsion, in terms of energy return, but it's still related to the rest of the shoes that I'm using. And that's important. You want that relationship. So when you get into your faster shoe, it's not like getting into a different operating system. Everything's familiar, it's just quicker. And it's quicker through the gears. When I'm doing my easy runs and strides, then I'll use what was the Pegasus Turbo, which I think was one of the best shoes Nike has ever used. And they're that good. I don't have the first generation, which were far better than these. These are the second generation, and these would pinch my heels. So I've not used them at all. But essentially, the Pegasus Turbo turned into the Pegasus Plus. It is pretty much identical, but improved in terms of the Flyknit upper. This is a great shoe. Feels super comfortable, and it bridges the gap between the Pegasus, gives you very little. This gives you a little bit, but it's comfortable. Maybe it's even too soft on the foot, but it makes me feel as if I want to go further, which is exactly the way that I want to feel when I'm doing an easy run, and I don't go further. I just use that energy for the next faster day. So the faster it gets, the more interesting it gets. My faster sessions, my interval sessions, and when it gets to the business end of the training, are run in these. So it started with this generation 1, 4%. Then it went to the 4%, and this was insanely popular. To a point that when Nike said they were going to improve this and actually discontinue the 4%, I would see people panic buying those at Berlin Marathon. I want to say 2019, panic buying 5, 6 pairs of these, as many pairs that they would be sold, because they thought that these would never be sold again, and they weren't. But this is what happened. There was a flaw with this shoe, and this is the brilliance of Nike. And it's not a Nike advert, but you've got to love them for this. There was a conversation with Patrick Sank before Berlin Marathon, and a question from a journalist was, is Eluid going to break the world record tomorrow? And Patrick Sank essentially said, if it's raining, no. But if it is dry and still cool, then he's got a chance, yeah. And the reason was the sole. Once it would get slippy, once it would get wet outside, this wouldn't be as good round corners. And Nike wanted to correct that. So with everybody panic buying the 4%, thinking it cannot get any better than this, and I was one of those people thinking it cannot get any better, what are they doing? Nike released something, and the funny thing is, I don't actually have a pair of the original Vaporfly, the green Next Percents. I don't have a pair because I've used them all, because in my opinion, That is as good as it's got. Even based on the latest Alpha Flies or the subsequent editions and the Alpha Fly. The grip became something completely different. And it was also improved on the Alpha Fly. And all of a sudden, this became Eluid's go-to shoe. And of the first 30 marathons he ran, he won 12. In terms of consistency, it's absolutely ridiculous. And any person in any sport can respect that level of consistency at the very highest level. And we know as runners, we know as marathon runners, every 1 in 4 maybe, you're gonna have a bad run. You're gonna have a bad stomach, muscles, illness, etc. 12 out of 13 wins. Unbelievable. And again, they gave you the choice. So this wasn't my favorite choice. And my favorite was certainly the Vaporfly, the next percent, initially the green and then the pink. And to a point, again, I think it was 2019 or 2020, probably 2019 with COVID, there were people, again, this craziness, but the beauty of Nike, there were people lined up around the store for the pink version of the Vaporfly just because it was a new color. A new colorway would bring all this new attention, and the next day, most of the runners that I saw running in Vaporfly were actually in the pink version, meaning they only released the day before, they'd only had them for a day. And again, it comes down to, I can get in a new pair of Vaporfly and be completely fine. I know it's my shoe, I know it works. I can have them delivered to my door and I can go out for a run immediately. It's just simple, because once you've got something that works and something that is so good that it's not going to change too much along the way. There will be variations. We've seen variations with a turbo, with the Pegasus Plus. I didn't like it when they dropped that. They're going to make decisions that don't favor you because they're making for the mass market. With the Pegasus, what are we on, year 42? So it comes down to what is good for you right now, but I want to be running forever until I die. And so who is going to be there for me brand-wise in the long term? And I think for sure, the brand that I've chosen are going to be there. So I'll do all my faster stuff, all my interval sessions, all my heel rep sessions in this shoe. And essentially what I do is when I'm running marathon pace or just 10% slower, I'll use these. So that will be in the intervals. Definitely when I'm running faster than marathon pace, I'll use these. Definitely in the interval session midweek, and also in the specific long run when it gets to the business end of the training schedule, so 8 to 10 weeks out. So what you're doing is, and what I'm doing is essentially similar to nutrition, is you're practicing with exactly the same stride length as you're going to be for long periods of time in the specific long run, at the pace you're going to be running and the effort you're going to be running in the right shoes. Don't be one of those people that takes these out of the box unless you're used to them, like I just said, but don't be one of these people that tries something new on race day. Don't be one of these people that, oh yeah, I'm gonna use the Alpha Fly 3 months from now, but I'm keeping them in the box, I'm keeping them fresh, they're expensive, you've got to use them in the training or you're not gonna be able to get the benefits from the training, you're likely to run into trouble. And as I said, if these are doing the job for you, and they will, then it's going to give you that extra bit on the stride length, which will feel quick at first, but if you don't look after your future self in the marathon, you're going to get into trouble. What's also really important to talk about when we talk about shoe rotation is when I'm not wearing shoes. So most of the time I'm in the house, I'm not wearing shoes. I'm strengthening my feet. I'm also doing 2 kilometers a week, which is not a great deal. And I had to build up to that, start with 200 meters, but I'm doing it on the inside of a track on the grass. So there's no nails, there's no glass there. It's just me running barefoot. And what that's going to do is strengthen your feet, but also getting you running in the right way. You cannot run in the wrong way when you're running in barefoot. If you heel strike, you'll know about it. If you land on your toes too much, your Achilles are going to feel it. So all of a sudden, a bit like a child, you start to run in the right way. And that crosses over, that good habit crosses over to when you're running faster, when you're doing your recovery runs and easy runs, when you're running far. There are lots of studies, and I'm constantly looking at my biomechanics as I'm running different speeds in Supershoes. There are lots of studies about Supershoes to show how effective they are. Can they give you 10%? It is likely that they can. They'll give you 5 to 15%. If you use them in the training, you get used to them and you can really put them to use as a weapon, as a tool on race day, it can make a massive difference. But without the right shoe rotation and using non-super shoes, non-carbon plate shoes, and it's not just about the carbon plate, it's the relationship between the foam, mostly the foam, with the carbon plate involved. If you do your other running, your slower running, your easier running, without that access to the propulsion and the energy saving, it's going to allow you to tap in to that tool, that super shoe tool on race day. Good luck, and drop your shoe rotation in the comments, and also let me know if you want me to test a certain type of shoe, and I'll do it.